Hey guys, what's up? Today we're gonna talk about JRPGs that need a remake. And I gathered 10 that in my opinion needed the most. And by remake, I mean it literally. Not an enhanced port, not a remaster, I already did a video about that, but a full, from scratch remake. And with that clarified, let's begin! Number 10. The Legend of Dragoon. I wanted to start with the most obvious in the list, which is a game that's been in need for a remaster or at least a remake. As a game that now features in both videos that I did, I can only keep vouching for it. I truly believe its gameplay mechanics feel a little bit outdated, specifically some details in its battle system. On the other hand, I also feel the game is still perfectly playable and totally enjoyable as it is. So I'm still leaning more towards a remaster. If, however, a remake will become a reality one day, which I seriously doubt, then it will have to be redone. Literally a remake, a full reimagining of the game, just like the Final Fantasy VII remake. I just hope by all means they don't decide to change it into an action RPG. It may have worked for Final Fantasy VII depending on your perspective, but I'm convinced it will totally ruin the Legend of Dragoon. So this is one that if it ever gets a remake, it will seriously have to remain turn-based. Number 9. Panzer Dragoon Saga. Literally one of the most expensive physical RPGs nowadays, exclusive to the Sega Saturn. Did you know that the first Panzer Dragoon, an on-rail shooter also for the Sega Saturn, was recently remade? I was wondering if the same company would consider the role-playing game from the same series. You see, Panzer Dragoon Saga is a highly unique adventure mixing turn-based battles with some free-roaming exploration. It was actually developed to compete against Final Fantasy VII, but obviously outside of Japan, it didn't even come close. Alas, you know the story. Limited print run, Saturn failed in the West, and due to the critical acclaim, the price of this game shot up like crazy. I will say this though, playing this fantastic RPG nowadays on an emulator kinda sucks. It's not really outdated, but it feels like something aggravating from the past. My complaint was always the camera and the clunky controls. But then again, I kinda suck at rail shooters, so yeah. This situation, therefore, leads me to believe that a remake of this important JRPG will be ideal. Maybe it could help narrowing down that outrageous price as well? Number 8. Phantasy Star 4. You know, the first two Phantasy Star games were remade for the PS2. Unfortunately, we never got either. The third one was ignored for some reason, maybe because it's the black sheep of the family. I strongly believe a full remake of it fixing all of its issues will work wonders. So I guess Phantasy Star 3 is like my honorable mention. The one that might need it too is the fourth one. Now, Phantasy Star 4 is a masterpiece. I can still play the game nowadays and ignore what little flaws it may have. A remake, however, will just make it look much better, maybe with today's graphics. Fixing the abominable encounter rate will be nice, Sega, please. Some difficulty spikes could be fixed as well, but at least I didn't have much trouble with them because I loved grinding here. In the end, this is yet another RPG in the list that's okay without a remake. Nevertheless, there are thousands of gamers having a hard time getting into it nowadays, so it could probably use one for sure. Number 7. Parasite Eve. Here is yet another masterpiece, a revolutionary game that mixed survival horror and role-playing to perfection. It's also yet another game that I included in my video about JRPGs needing a remaster. I really think what Kitase said about this game in an interview was strongly misunderstood, with magazines and YouTubers just taking advantage of it to gain views. He just said that in his opinion, forgetting about the characters will be a waste. That doesn't mean anything at all. Nonetheless, this led fans of the original Parasite Eve to imagine the possibility of a remaster, a new game, or a remake. Here's why I think it could use the latter. The graphics were impressive for its time, but they're kind of outdated. Aya moves extremely slow, so for today's standards, that wouldn't make any sense at all. A few parts of the game are cryptic, meaning you don't know what to do or where to go sometimes. Battle system is perfect in my opinion, and it should absolutely be left intact. Maybe they could fix the collision detection, but that's about it. Sadly, if Square Enix were to remake this game, they will easily turn into an action RPG, just like they did with the third birthday on the PSP, and that game wasn't even a remake. I just hope that never happens if they decide one day to bring this beautiful RPG back. Number 6. Breath of Fire 1 and 2. Honestly, I think all first 4 games could very well use a remake, but for the sake of this video, we'll just focus on the first 2. They got an enhanced port on the Game Boy Advance that fixed some issues, but the differences weren't really remarkable. A full remake of these 2 will be mind-blowing, to be honest, especially considering a few of their gameplay technicalities are beyond atrocious. Both are infamously known for having horrendous encounter rates, specifically the second one, so instead of forcing you to grind, the grinding itself is forced on you. Difficulty spikes are on another level, with some unfair bosses here and there that could very well be rebalanced. I still want these games to be hard, but not frustrating or tedious. Oh, and please allow running in towns, dungeons, and the overworld. I never understood why you couldn't do that. A fresh remake of this classic pair is much needed. I doubt Capcom will pull it off considering how embarrassingly they let the series die. But I can dream, right? Number 5. The first 3 Persona games. This trilogy is just like the Breath of Fire games. It desperately needs a remake, because I strongly believe the games are outdated, like seriously outdated. Almost the entire interface of all 3 is something of a chore nowadays. The first one was ported to the PSP but barely fixed anything. Sure, it looks better and the combat was rebalanced, but it still retained its encounter rate up to hell. So doing this slow-ass turn-based system over and over is just not fun anymore. I dare say the other 2 games, Eternal Punishment and Innocent Sin, have similar problems. Moving around feels clunky, I gotta admit, so navigating through areas is also tedious. I think the battle system in both is cool, much better than the first Persona game, that's for sure, but honestly, it could use some polish to make it also faster and more engaging. I guess my main complaint is that sometimes battles can take too long in this trilogy. Since especially both Persona 2 games have great stories, often you just want to get over the fighting so you can continue unraveling the mystery. Granted, I don't care much for the first Persona, but the other 2 definitely need a proper remake and not just a half-ass PSP port. Number 4. Tales of Phantasia. This game is the very first Tales of ever made. It was originally released on the Super Famicom only in Japan. It's been ported several times to many systems, but we only got 2, the Game Boy Advance version, which is absolutely terrible, and the iOS one, which I couldn't really care less about. What this game needs is not another port, it's a damn remake. Sadly, we know how Namco feels about remaking stuff, especially since they said no to a Saga remaster. But they still released several updated versions of some Tales of games like Symphonia, Graces, and Vesperia. Why the hell not Tales of Phantasia? Just look at this gameplay. I mean, it was awesome and revolutionary back then, and when I first played it, I was impressed. I love this game, as I played the fan-translated port on the PlayStation. But it's outdated. I played this today and I'm tired of the random encounters, the button mashing and the clunky controls, especially when running around. Tales of Phantasia hasn't aged very well in my opinion, which is the reason why I will capitalize on a remake if I were Bandai Namco. Same thing could be easily said about Tales of Destiny 1 and 2 by the way, but to ignore the game that gave birth to such an iconic series, it's a big waste. Number 3. Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War and Fire Emblem Phantasia 776. Two strongly connected games, story-wise, available only in Japan for the Super Famicom. First of all, we need an English release of these two, even if it's just a damn port or whatever. But if I were Intelligent Systems, I will beg Nintendo for a full remake released worldwide on their best-selling system, the Switch. I wouldn't call these games outdated, even though the graphics look way too old, as I think they're perfectly playable and enjoyable. But like many other RPGs we've seen in this video, polishing the gameplay itself is exactly what needs to be done. They're both full of major problems, especially Phantasia with its obnoxious difficulty, frustrating spikes, and unspeakable RNG. The game is literally broken. Genealogy of the Holy War is slightly better in those areas, with a perfect high difficulty, but some maps could easily be rebalanced. They can certainly be unfair with some enemy numbers and reinforcements. I doubt the music needs to be changed, because it's freaking amazing in both games, unless they do something like Kadokawa did with the Langrisser remakes. Phantasia is the one that needs a lot of fixing, because it's just a damn mess of a strategy RPG in almost everything. So that's why these two games are so high on the list, because they really need a remake nowadays. Number 2. Final Fantasy VI. I never thought I'd see the day where I would fantasize with Final Fantasy VI being remade exactly the way 7 was done. In fact, when I first watched the trailers of the latter, I started thinking of what other Final Fantasy games could be remade like this. Of course, my favorite 9 was the first one that came into my mind. But since I love that game so much exactly the way it is, I didn't think it needed a remake. The 6th one, however, I found out it has never been remade. Just a million ports to several different systems, but not a single remake. Not even like the one they did with Final Fantasy IV on the Nintendo DS. If a game that was already great on the PlayStation like 7 didn't really need one, then I think Square Enix's next goal should honestly be this masterpiece. Now, is any version of this game outdated? A little bit, I'd say, considering the high encounter rate in some versions, loading times, super deformed sprites, difficulty spikes, etc. Of course, all of these characteristics are more tedious and notorious in other RPGs we've seen so far, but the fact remains that this game could use some polish. But a remaster? Nah, I think a full remake a la Final Fantasy VII will be astonishing. However, can you really imagine this game as an action RPG? I don't know about that. Number 1. Xenogears. Xenogears is also one of the most obvious RPGs in existence nowadays that needs a remake like right now. It's owned by the same company that owns Final Fantasy, but it will be tragically converted into a beat-em-up simulator and probably a shooter in third person for the mech battles. So yeah, you see, this is why action RPGs work for some titles but not for others. Xenogears should remain turn-based, thank you very much. Now let's talk about why this ginormous cult classic needs a remake. Infamously known for its horrible camera, exploring dungeons, towns, and even the map can often be a nerve-wracking catastrophe. It simply has, in my opinion, some of the worst camera controls ever created. Encounter rate is high, but that could disappear with a remake where you could see the enemies around. Loading times will be gone too, thankfully, I guess what bothered me the most about Xenogears was the layout of some of the dungeons, especially the sewers, so reworking them from scratch will be more than ideal. Maybe more detailed versions of them to prevent the lack of direction. A remake means no more rushed Disc 2, so more gameplay to intersect between all those great dialogues and cutscenes will surpass my expectations. I admit that I still love this game with a passion as it is, but I've never gone back to it properly because of the defects that I mentioned. And that is the reason why Xenogears needs a remake more so than any other game in this list. There are a bunch of JRPGs that could have been in this video, but they weren't, because I think they don't need a remake. Like for example, the Lancer series, I think we need a collection, a remaster of some sorts, or maybe a small remake like what they did with the Langreaser games, but at the same time, not really. Suikoden games are great in my opinion, they don't need a remake, not a single one of them, maybe just the first one, but you know, it's Konami, it's just not gonna happen. Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, there were rumors of a remake some time ago, but again, I don't see anything wrong with this game. It's just fantastic, the PS2 version is fantastic. It could very well use a remaster, but a remake? I don't see why, I don't see the need for a remake on this game. Chrono Cross is my absolute favorite RPG of all time. It's just perfect in my opinion, I don't think it needs a remake, maybe just a remaster of some sort, not a remake. Same case with Super Mario RPG, it's a great game, I found no major problems with that game, just small details, but nothing really that merits a remake. And the Xenosaga Trilogy is a game cut into 3 parts that we all know very well it needs a remaster, a port, or a remake even, but it's just not gonna happen because Bandai Namco just told us recently to go fuck ourselves. So that's it for this video, thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!